A cell is a history. A cell is a home. A cell is a whole. A cell is a cage. A cell is an electric fence, enclosing your legible unknown. To break the cell is to trespass the most intimate of spaces. Dear donor T2305, I received 5 milliliters of your saliva in June. It wasn't hard to get. Using my academic email and mailing address, I simply said it was for research, genetic testing, the truth. When it arrived, I moved it quickly to the freezer to keep it fresh and alive. I sent 2 milliliters of your fluid for sequencing, and then I waited and waited and waited. 6 weeks came and went, and then another time over. The company was experiencing unusually long processing times. When the results finally trickled in 6 months later, I devoured your profile in a single sitting. You are 46 years old with dark brown eyes, a full head of brown hair, and few freckles. You toss and turn in bed, and you enjoy a savory midnight snack. You like to run, for miles, for hours, and this keeps you slim, keeps your heart beating strong, and helps tame your sometimes wild thoughts. You were my first, and I think of you frequently. I imagine your face, your voice, the way you walk. I'm curious where you grew up. I worry for your health, and I wonder what you would think of me poring over your genetic details. I'd like to think you would be flattered, but you might be very angry. Dear donor, on Monday afternoon, I immortalized your cells. Centrifuged and gently washed, I infected you with the simian virus SV40 to induce replication. Suspended in a solution of amino acids, vitamins, sugars, and held at the temperature of my body, you were beginning to grow. On the microscope's platform, I studied your shape. Transfected with the gene from a jellyfish, you glowed green with fluorescence, and I watched you divide. Your cells want to grow, and I passage them to feel you. Hello, I'm Heather Dewey-Hagborg. What you just saw is an excerpt of T3511. It's a science fiction detective story romance about a biohacker who purchases an anonymous donor's saliva online, profiles their genetic data, and proceeds to fall in love with them. The story is true, sort of. On June 20th, 2017, I bought a saliva sample from one of a slew of companies selling specimens from single human donors online. As you can see, saliva is just one of a wide variety of human fluids available for sale. I chose saliva for a reason because I knew it would be easy to hack. With very little effort, with no lab required, I could simply pour the stranger's fluid into a standard kit purchased in a drugstore for direct-to-consumer genomic analysis. 23andMe is one of the most prominent of a whole spectrum of companies that have begun offering genetic testing directly to consumers outside a medical context. You buy a kit like this for $99, spit, drop it in the mail, and a month or so later you get an elaborate report detailing your ancestry and genetic traits. So I took the stranger's saliva, I poured it in the kit, and I mailed it in. This is their 23andMe profile that I received a few months later. They have dark eyes, they prefer salty snacks, and they don't have much back hair. When I got their data back, I began poring over it, imagining this person, what they might look like, what they might act like, how they might feel about me analyzing their genetic material. I wanted to see how easy it would be, actually, not only to imagine a person based on their genome, but to make a guess at who they are. What I found is that it was actually not difficult at all. Y chromosome analysis led me to a close relative, a last name, a geographical location, and a very public Facebook profile. And it turned out, no surprise, that they lived in the very same city that I'd bought the saliva from, just miles away from the lab. By simply buying saliva and using easily available commercial services, I was able to re-identify them in a few months. So T3511 is a story about genetic vulnerability, that you, your data, your cells might end up for sale. That your biodata is like your other electronic data, hackable, legible, and draws a vivid portrait of who you are. But T3511 is also a deeply personal story on two levels. First, it describes actual experimentation I conducted in how easy it would be to re-identify a person from their saliva, from their DNA. And the narrative details my own conflicted feelings about this work, the ambiguity that I felt as I was performing it. On the second level, it describes in parallel how it feels to fall in love, to open yourself, to make yourself vulnerable to another person. T3511 is part of a set of recent works that I've made exploring biotechnological futures and intimacy, called At the Temperature of My Body. The exhibition is a meditation on intimacy, desire, and spirituality, anticipating a world of emerging biotechnological rituals. The exhibition consists of 3 works corresponding to 3 phases of love: desire, attachment, and grief. T3511, Lovesick, and Spirit Molecule. Through the frame of speculative narrative, they introduce science that's entirely real. Each of these works is strongly narrative, it tells a deeply personal story, and each also raises significant ethical and political issues. Lovesick is the outcome of an art residency I completed in the spring of 2019 with Science Center, a biotechnology incubator and Integral Molecular, a vaccine and drug discovery company, both located in Philadelphia. Together with the scientists at Integral Molecular, I invented a custom retrovirus which infects human cells to insert an extra copy of the gene that produces oxytocin. The hormone oxytocin is implicated in feelings of love and bonding and the promotion of empathy and connection. I envisioned the work as an activist intervention to spread affection, physical closeness, attachment, and to combat alienation, disconnection, and hate. I imagined a narrative world neighboring our own in which this virus was developed and gained mass adoption. I'll share a bit of this story with you today. A biohacker becomes disenchanted with the way things are politically and personally, and endeavors to change the world. She engineers a love virus in an effort to combat hate and alienation, and to make herself feel more connected. In addition to increasing a person's oxytocin levels, the virus also inserts a gene for red fluorescent protein as a reporter, which leaves a telltale pink-red glow on the skin of the infected. The virus works, and the biohacker can see the invisible production of oxytocin through its genetic link to the glow of red fluorescence. She loses interest in her phone and begins to feel better, more social, more affectionate, cuddly. She finds herself suddenly holding hands with strangers. Her friends catch on and want in. The biohacker and her friends begin an underground cottage industry producing the lovesick virus. They encapsulate the virus in glass tubes shaped like the oxytocin molecule. The virus is not to be taken lightly. After all, it changes your DNA forever. New rituals emerge, breaking open the tube like a cyanide capsule. pouring the contents into your mouth, holding it for a minute, incubating, and then swallowing. This is followed by a polyphonic group chanting of the oxytocin proteins. It begins as a cult phenomenon but catches on with a speed and reckless audacity you only see in people facing the end of the world. Glowing red symbolizes that you're part of the growing movement of connection. News feeds feature models and actors splayed on the grass, entwined in a loving embrace, with the subtle red glow of one who has been infected. A new group dance style emerges, the tango. Bodies enmeshed, hand in hand, arm in arm, leg in leg, shapes subtly shifting in space. All the clubs now feature electric blue lights to enhance your glow. Family changes. Prejudice based on blood gives way to radical openness. The people that are with you at any given moment become your family. There's a return of certain rituals from the past, holding hands while walking down the street, sometimes in huge groups, before meals, while dancing. And then there's the rejection of devices. Giant piles of phones, tablets, laptops, flat screens, and a few VR goggles fill city streets like barricades in the French Revolution. It becomes the thing to demonstrate how over digital you are. There is, of course, the resistance, and they retreat even further into their parallel, mediated world. But most people actually leave it behind and come together. We called it becoming one. I started developing this project more than a year before coronavirus hit, and now, of course, I'm thinking about this artwork in a new light. Now I think of Lovesick as a device for engaging utopia, a framing mechanism for envisioning a post-digital, post-coronavirus future. It's an effort to inspire optimism and enthusiasm for dreaming up a plurality of paths radically different from the ones that passively confront us. The last work in this exhibition is Spirit Molecule, which poses the idea of a genetic memorial. In collaboration with artist and botanist Philip Andrew Lewis, the project consists of a series of experiments that imagine a future of biotechnological mourning as we engineer a lost loved one's DNA into a psychoactive plant that's then consumed in a final journey of intimacy with the other. Spirit Molecule, in its various incarnations, turns the gallery into a living laboratory where legal psychoactive plants like morning glory, passion flower, tobacco, and liverwort become subjects of experimentation in genetic manipulation. The genetic material which is chosen for implantation is a 400 base pair bit of mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down matrilineally from great-great-grandmother to great-grandchildren, grandchildren, and it's the same DNA that's often used for tracing maternal ancestry. The film which accompanies the laboratory installation tells the story of one such person who wished to transform their loved one, Ginny, into a psychoactive plant, to connect with her one final time. Spirit Molecule is a narrative of love, loss, and bioengineering as a process of grieving. The work invites the visitor to contemplate whether they would like to be transformed into a plant, or perhaps if they would immortalize their loved one in such a way. Over the last year, we've gone globally through a time of such profound loss, and there's no end in sight. Personally, I'm struggling to find my own way through my grief. It's incredibly difficult to think about making art in these times. But when possible, I do believe that we should try, because art is what will bring us back together. It's what will help us mourn. It's what will distract us and allow us to fantasize, and ultimately invite us to a different future. Thank you.